and welcome to another Beagle Bites. Today I'm going to spend a little bit of time just looking at footwear, comparing and contrasting spikes and also looking at different lacing techniques. As always, there's some additional text to go with this Beagle Bites for further information. So first off, if you're in the market for a new pair of spikes or your very first pair of spikes, a good starting point would be a mid-distance spike. These have a little bit of a heel to them and they're generally quite good for multiple events. They can be used in field events, long jump, triple jump, even high jump. In contrast, when you look at a sprint spike, you can see there's very little in the way of an actual heel there, and these can be a little bit uncomfortable, especially along the longer distances. Generally we only use those up to 400 meters. And it's not a spike I'd advocate using necessarily in things like high jump. There's not enough support to them. So if you're in the market for a general spike, I would certainly consider using mid-distance spikes as a starting point. Now, how we lace trainers and how we lace spikes can affect how the shoe performs. It can also be advantageous when we have perhaps a high instep or if we have a very narrow foot. Traditional training for most sports shoes will be crossover style, and it's really important that we use the tongue guides on this. So lacing through those, it stops the tongue sliding down either side of the shoe too much. Moving on from the traditional crossover, we can then do what's known as a heel lock. This is really advantageous in wet weather or in particular on cross countries. So we've often got on trainers two little eyelets there. Most people don't use the second one. The actual method of using it is to pass that lace back through, and then you're going to bring that to the other side. Having done the same the other side, you pass the lace back through that point. When you pull tight from there, that will actually bring the back of the heel round and it encompasses the ankle a lot tighter. So that's what's known as a heel lock. Okay. Moving on from that, some athletes might get something called black toenail or black toe. In particular, this is common for long distance runners and it affects primarily the big toe. One way of lacing to avoid this is to use the simple lacing whereby you start in the eyelet directly back from the big toe, and that one will pass diagonally up the shoe, coming straight out at that point. The other ones do a crossover fashion, passing underneath, coming over the top in a straight loop, finally making their way out at the top. This one will tend to give a little bit more room to the big toe area and won't pull the shoe up into the big toe. Hence the reason why it's good for anyone that suffers from big toe problems or black toenail. We then have fashion shoe shop style. Now, a lot of times when we purchase shoes, these are done this way because they look good on the shelf. But there is a place for using this in athletes as well. And it's those that feel that their shoe is slightly too tight, it wraps around the foot too much. What we do here is starting at this point, coming across, and as it comes out, it'll actually move up underneath the fabric here, come out on the second one, move across, and then move up and come out on the top. Okay, that tends to give a little bit more width to the shoe, and generally it will stay in one place as well. It won't tighten up, it won't become too loose. And this is one lacing most people aren't actually familiar with, and this is the lacing for a high midfoot. Now what we do here, we start the conventional way at the bottom there, okay, and as you come a little way up after you've done the first two sets, you actually then pass it up the outside of the shoe, so there's nothing crossing at this point, and this helps someone who's got a mid arch or a high arch position there. Another way of actually lacing that is if you've got a wide forefoot and you actually start that slightly lower down, but have a look at the blurb in the accompanying text. Going back to spikes, when we're looking at spikes, one thing I do advise all athletes is to put either a little dab of Vaseline or copper grease in the hole before screwing the spikes in. And every time you change those spikes, renew that Vaseline or copper grease. It stops them from welding into place. Makes it a lot easier than trying to get the big vise out or even having them drilled out for you to be able to replace them. Now, as always, trainers should not be put in washing machines. So if they are overly wet, take the inner lining out if there is a removable one, stuff it with newspaper and leave it somewhere at room temperature to actually dry out. You can clean them with conventional toothbrush around the midsole section and on the sole section as well, but just do not put them in the washing machine. The glue will fail quite quickly. Finally, thinking about running shoes, if you're someone that suffers with knee problems or the front of knee or anterior knee pain, do consider what something's called a toe drop. And this is the depth of the midsole back at the heel compared to the midsole at the midfoot position. And the bigger the difference, they'll actually class that as a 5mm or an 8mm or even a 10mm toe drop, this area being less. As you do that, you tend to push forwards a little bit more because it's dropping forwards, and that puts more pressure on the knee. So if you need further advice on that, do have a word with Paul or myself about toe drop. Most decent shoe suppliers will actually list their toe drop, and it's important that you get the right shoes for you, especially if you're doing the longer distances. Hopefully this has been helpful. As I say, do read the accompanying text, as it will give you a greater guide to possibly lace your trainers a different way.